Welcome to Jung at Harp, episode number 169, Permission to be Fully Present. I'm Kathleen Wiley, a Jungian Psychoanalyst in North Carolina, and I am here with Deborah Henson-Conant, a composer, a mentor, a creative. We both play the harp, and that's why we call this Jung at Harp. So almost weekly, DHC and I come together to have a conversation around a question that we're both perking around. And we invite you into the conversation if you're joining us live with the platform that you're on. Hopefully, there is a mechanism for your putting in a comment, and then if all works well, we'll see it and you'll get to participate live in our dialogue. So, we started out this morning kind of sharing what was happening with us and musing about what has energy for us and where we feel an aliveness of our own self and our ability to be present and share. And when we're in the presence of other people and other musicians who may be playing, where we feel a connection to their aliveness, or if we feel like everybody's in a box, that whoever's playing, or if we're playing, we have to be in a certain box a certain way. And as a listener, we have to be in a certain box. And we came up with this question of what does it mean to be fully present? And how do you give yourself permission to be fully present? So we want to hear your thoughts about that. And Deborah, I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, I'm laughing because I was like super crabby about this and just like complaining about it. But as you were speaking, Kathleen, it reminded me, my friend Karen Montanaro, we were talking about this one day, and we were saying, you go on stage and you think you're showing whatever you think you're showing. But in fact, all they see is what you're trying to hide and how you're trying to hide it. And and then sometimes you break through and they are seeing that moment of creation and creativity in action in the moment.
Mhm.
And that's what we really want. Otherwise, I mean, it's interesting to see how people are hiding, but if they think they're showing us something else and we always see is how they're hiding, that's a disconnect. And you said earlier this morning also that it's beautiful to be in that moment when we see creation happening. And I think that's
Mhm.
why some people love jazz, and I think that's why some people get frustrated if that's not happening with jazz or they don't hear it happening with jazz. And it can happen in any kind of performance, whether it's improvisatory or not. But I've been thinking about it a lot lately, in noticing in Hip Hop Academy that one of the things a lot of the people in the academy, it's half and half. People who either started the harp and then got burned out on it and left, and they're coming back looking for freedom. They got stuck in it. And then many of the other people that are in the academy are people who started the harp late in their life, sometimes
Mhm.
after retirement. And so each person has different skills, and what I discover, for one thing, is that often people who come who haven't been in the harp their whole lives, they are reticent to bring all the skills and expertise that they
Mhm.
do have. And I had the same thing. When I came to the harp, I was like, no, I've got to be a good harpist and I'm going to be good at being what a harpist is, rather than taking some of the simplest things that you can do on a harp, like maybe, and then adding whatever, like a story from your life or something. I get
Mhm.
that that's not, hello, I'm not a great harpist if I do this, but I can explore even with just single fingers. I
Mhm.
can explore musicality, I can explore a theme, an idea. This is an idea. I can move it around, I can play with it. It becomes music instantly if I'm playing with it. And it
Mhm.
becomes boring instantly if I'm fighting with myself trying to do it right.
Mhm.
And so I get very frustrated if I'm seeing someone try to do something right, when in fact I'm longing to see them play with what they can do.
Mhm. Mhm. I think about what you're saying as the difference between being present and hearing music that's kind of sounds hollow and empty because it's rote, and mechanical the way it should be. Perhaps technically it's right, but there's an aliveness, a soulful quality that's missing that I think may be part of what you're talking about. Um, and that being present and playing that in the moment and letting whatever you're playing unfold in the moment, even if it is a tune you already know, that each time you play it, it may be played slightly different because of your relationship to it in the moment and your relationship to the people and the setting you're in.
Yeah, and because you're playing it in the way that you can play it right now. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if your fingers are stiff, do you try to play it at the tempo that you can when your fingers are warmed up? I mean, for practice, you might do that. Or whether you're with your colleagues when you're developing something. That's one of the beautiful things about the academy is we're colleagues. So people are, it's a place to it's a place to do everything messy and
Mm-hmm.
wrong and so that you can just experiment. But when you go out to play for other people, it's not about proving yourself. It's about, like making that connection. I just lost what you just asked. What did you just ask?
Well, I mean, I think what we're talking about is what is, this is how I'm going to say it now.
Yeah.
What we're trying to get at, I think, is what does it mean to be fully present? And
Right. Right.
how do you experience yourself as fully present? How do you feel and experience yourself and an other when they're fully present? And that
Yeah.
there's something about a certain way of having to be or having to get it right that forecloses on being fully present.
Right. Yeah, and it's breathtaking. Is it breathtaking when someone is fully present? And
Hmm.
here's an example. In the academy, there was someone who started very late in life. I don't think she'd had any other musical training, and she just kept being in the academy. Was sometimes frustrated and would say it about it. And then one of the things do every week is I teach a snippet, just some little thing that's like, hey, look at this. If you go like this, look how that's just a beautiful thing you can play with. And maybe it goes maybe it goes more, but I gave her some snippet that somehow meant something to her. And
Hmm.
she said to herself, that's my thing. I'm just
Hmm.
going to play that thing. That's my thing. I'm going to play it every day. I'm going to play it for 10 minutes or 20 or 30. And I'm not going to try to play anything else. I'm going to play that and I'm going to see where it takes me. And
Hmm.
so she took it on as a practice, almost like a meditative practice. And then, first she talked about it. And then, 2 months later, she made a video and she played it. And she was like, where do I go from here? What do I do? Is this boring? It was fascinating.
Hmm.
Because she was fully present in
Hmm.
what she was doing. It was absolutely, completely music. And I've had
Hmm.
people in the academy also say that I would give them snippets. They would just put a bunch of snippets together and then they'd play with them musically. And they'd be like, is that music? And I'm like, feels like music. It feels so much more like music than someone trying to be interesting.
So being false.
I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, part of what my work is all about is helping people really trust that who they are in their essence is good enough and that there's beauty in that. And that when we can give up the being in the roles and trying to put on airs or put on faces or meet up to the collective should, must, and ought tos, and we can really relax and trust that our own essence is good enough, that there's beauty in that expression, whether it's at the harp or it's in stating your desires to a friend or it's in doing a creative art project or how you garden. That there's beauty in that which isn't all formed up and cloaked in these externally learned and internalized um, mask and roles, you know.
As you were as you said, internally cloaked, I thought, wow. I had this image of myself, moving or anybody moving. naked or part naked or whatever. I mean, which would be like horrifying to me for myself if I were like that. But then I thought, what if it wasn't about what I look like? What if it was, I'm not, anyway, I just, there was something so interesting when you were saying about being cloaked.
Yeah.
There was something I wanted to go back to and I can't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. It'll come up again.
Yeah.
So we're talking about being permission to be present. And I think I hear people so often saying, is this boring? And it's only boring. I want to find out, I would love to know at what point is it boring? Because it feels like it's boring when you're trying to impress me or you're trying, but it's never boring. Oh, I know what I was going to say. One of my favorite performances I ever saw, ever. It was a comedian, physical comedian, doing a routine with a music stand. So all he was doing, there are these music stands where you try to open them up and they go backwards and they fall apart. And it's something, but it was so interesting to have. So he was a musician, but all he was doing was playing with the music stand. He didn't even play a note. And that was fascinating. And because as you were speaking, I was thinking like, wow, so could person make a fascinating concert by only playing a single note? What would that be like? What would that take? How much more of that? I mean, I'm thinking like, wow, I would love to do that because with that limitation, what else? I mean, it's no longer just about the note. It's about everything like everything you could do with that note, all the different character that you could have with that single note, all the discovery, or one string. What am I saying, Kathleen?
Well, I think part of what you're saying is that in this moment in time, you're really, the exploration for you is part of the being fully present. That's part of how you experience an other as being fully present. Is when there's something they're not doing something that's rote,
Right.
even though they may play the same snippet over and over
Right.
again. The snippet is the same, but it's not rote because every time they play it a little bit differently. The quality of their consciousness is what I would say informs and shapes and flows into how they play the snippet every single time. And if they're fully conscious and fully present, that's different every second. It doesn't stay static.
Right. So when I was seeing Monica come to this, this one,
Yeah.
and I don't even remember what it was, I saw her, play something she loved. I saw her love it, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then again, I can't remember what. And I saw her explore it, and I saw that when she got lost, she came back to that. So then I got to be on that journey as well. So she well, this was my experience, that she took one musical idea. She went on a journey with it. She stayed present to it. She allowed me into that journey, and she didn't have a preconception of how that journey was supposed to go. So wherever it went, if she got lost, no problem. She just came back, and so did I. So I got to go someplace I'd never been. And I find that will happen whenever somebody actually plays with something that they're not struggling with technically. Doesn't mean you shouldn't struggle with stuff technically. I mean, that's fun too. And that can even be an exploration. But so what are you hearing, or what do you?
Well, there's the element of discovery. I mean, if we're fully present in this moment, then we're discovering something in this moment because we're just now experiencing it.
Yes.
And that's different when you're then, if you know what's going to happen and predictable, that if it's predictable, then there's an automatic kind of numbing out that happens, that the presence gets the conscious presence gets turned down. It gets dialed down.
Right, right, right. And
Yeah.
that's how I often feel in concerts, regardless of the technical ability of people, is I feel
Mm-hmm.
they're showing me something that's predictable. They already know how it's going to go. Well, I'm not I just, well, why am I
Mm-hmm.
there then? What are we
Mm-hmm.
doing here? And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm so freaking fascinated when I watch people in the academy who are, I don't, whatever their technical ability, but they are willing to be in that exploration rather than in the I'm going to learn to do something so I'm good at it so I can show you that I'm good at it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
don't know how to engage with that. I don't know how to be. I don't understand. Honestly, it's like if you made love with somebody and they were just trying to be a good lover. It's just not interesting.
Well, I think you're talking about it on your side as the listener. And I'm thinking about recently when I taught in the seminar where we train therapists who want to be Jungian analysts, and I had them, part of their assignment was to write a paper about the material they were reading and their relationship to it. And so afterwards, I said to them, I'm not evaluating the papers, so I'm not giving you any evaluative feedback. If there's a specific question you'd like for me to respond to, I'll do it. And I think what you're talking about is that you can't stand when someone plays for you and wants an evaluative feedback.
Yeah,
That
right.
you don't see that that's your role, and that what you want is you want to be there with them as kind of a co-creative presence, not
Right.
that you're necessarily playing with them, but that that your presence makes a difference positively, and their presence makes a difference positively for each other.
Yeah, I mean, my job as a coach is to help them get to where they want to go that they may or may not know, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know it ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's see, let's pull up what Victoria is saying as part of this conversation. So Victoria is saying, at work, I can do something I have never done before and feel okay
Yeah.
to explore, but I found it harder to do on the harp. I wonder what makes the difference. So it's interesting, Victoria. I'm curious about that because I know that as a kid, I was left just alone. Like all my grandparents and parents worked. And so I was pretty much, they were like, oh, she's happy with the piano? Fine. Leave her with that. So I just got to play with it and I got to experiment it or experience it. I never took lessons and didn't occur to me to take lessons anymore. It would occur to me to take lessons of how to play with the dog. But
Uh,
and so I was left to just play, and I think that allowed me, somehow there was a structure that many people get shoved onto them about something that's supposed to be right in music lessons. And I think, and I'm wondering if that's part of it. Um, but it's interesting. Victoria, what is your work? Um, I mean, you don't have to tell us, but I think what Victoria is saying goes to the heart of what we named this permission to be present,
well, and
right?
I'd like to, yeah, I want to
Yeah.
respond to this for myself because I am, as a psychoanalyst, I do a lot of teaching and a lot of presentations, and I can stand up in front of 300 or 400 or 500 people, and I have energy to do that, but I don't get anxious. I don't worry about getting it wrong. I have a confidence that what I'm going to say will be good enough. That my intention is always that spirit might use me, that I say at least one thing that each person needs to hear. But I started learning the harp as an adult about 12, 14, yeah, I guess it's been 12 years ago, maybe 13, somewhere in there. And my right after my current husband and I, right before we got married, and he's a professional folk musician.
Mm.
And so I've learned to play the harp in the presence, living with someone who's played all the strings except the harp. Okay, he is like a genius on all primary instruments, the fiddle, because that's the king in folk music, but he plays all the other instrument strings. And here I am starting with a harp. And then, of course, when we were having musician friends over to play, many of them were often at his level. They were professional musicians. They were not, I mean, so I ended up feeling less than, not good enough, like what I could do wasn't enough. And I also got caught into this thing of it's not right,
Right.
because they want to play it a certain way. From
Right.
their mind, the tune is this way. So if I hit a wrong note, I may hear wrong, or I may get pushback, or I may suddenly, through eye contact, get the message that maybe I'm not welcome to play here at this jam session. So I think for me, what part of what made the difference is my own sense of competency. Um, the competency for me professionally has come through a lifelong pursuit of psychological and
Right.
spiritual interest, and I didn't have that. Now, what's made the difference for me and allowed me to start showing up at jams and playing around with accompaniment, and allowed me to begin to venture out to actually do a house concert with my husband in the summer, is I circle back to, why do I want to play the harp? What's my purpose? And when I connected my purpose with my work as a psychoanalyst as the same purpose for playing the harp, that made the difference, because I then relaxed enough into myself to fully show up. So I think the key is fully showing up, and looking at what are those elements. And for me, ultimately, from the time I was really a teenager on, what allowed me to show up fully with what I was doing was holding to my purpose. Holding on to what was my reason. And I don't mean a logical reason,
Mhm,
but I
mhm.
mean a heartfelt, full-bodied reason. And this is why I have the embodiment circle, because I think often people don't know that. They get so caught in their head that we have to have the muscles, the psychic muscles, to get back into our embodied self, to know what that is.
That
Yeah.
that's a really interesting description of embodied self too. And it's reminding me that one of the things that I love to encourage people, especially, well, whether you've been playing the harp your whole life or whether you're just starting, is what is it you're already passionate about? What is it
Yeah.
you're already an expert at, that you can bring in and use the harp as a vehicle for self-expression?
Right.
Not just on the harp. It's not like you have to shut everything else off. That's one of
Right.
the beautiful things about this instrument more than any other. It is a vehicle to
Right.
bring everything up. Let's see what Victoria is saying. And hi, Donald. Victoria's at my project manager, and I'm working on a project. I love how she says that no one has done before. And
Uh-huh.
when I read that, I was like, right, that's when I feel safe. One of the reasons I want to write my own music and always have is I don't want anybody telling me how somebody else did it. Like this
Right.
is I made this. I don't want to have to worry about that. But I have project management principles. Well, I want to know your project management principles that I can act on. I want to ask you about that. Um, and I love it that she's saying principles. So rather than something having to be, like you said, Kathleen, you've played the wrong note. She's
Right.
got principles she can go back to.
Right.
Well, yes, and Victoria, I do teach on musical principles. I
Right.
never thought about saying that rather than specific notes. But Kathleen, when you were telling your story, I felt like crying because
Mm-hmm.
and I felt the loneliness of that. And it also occurred to me that one of the things I've never realized is that while I grew up with people who played music all the time, and while my mother was professional level as a singer, none of them were professional level as performers, as musical
Mm-hmm.
instruments. And so it was always for fun and in the service of something else. And I think that gave me an opening, and I think it might
Yeah.
have totally shut me down if I'd been around others, who were like technically proficient or what technically trained. So I hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are some of the realities, and this is what happens often right in the classical world, in the world of the world of competition. And so to come back to who we are and what about the heart resonates for me, just like what about my work that I do day in and day out resonates for me. And I don't, again, for me, it's like full bodied. It's like the energy and the fire is there. That makes all the difference. And even to this day, since I finally tapped into this with the heart, when I'm playing and I am just fully present with myself and the harp and the music that I'm playing, it's so beautiful. And someone can walk in the room, and if I get caught in aware of their presence and think, is it good enough? It totally
Right.
changes the sound, you know. And so I think there is something about the being fully present that is the protection we need, as well as the protection to be safe enough to explore and be in the moment. You know,
Yeah,
because
as you're speaking, I'm thinking about, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of live workshops in Europe and also in the US in the next couple months, or between now and the middle of the summer. And I'm thinking that thing of being, I'm imagining as you're speaking, what I wish I could have given you, which is I wish I
Mhm.
could have been in the room and I said, Kathleen, I'm going to play this song. You can play all the wrong notes that you need. I'm going to hold it for you. I'm holding the song and you come as you can. And I
That would
think
have been
that,
such a gift.
right.
It would have been,
Yeah.
it would have been such a gift. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Victoria's given us another gift. Having something I can hang on to gives me the confidence to show up more fully present. It's like having guardrails. Structure helps. Feeling grounded helps. You know, I love how you said that thing about, and I know we have to end like
Yeah.
in 1 minute, how you said the idea about principles. And as you said that, I was like, right, there's all these principles. Like there's the principle that if you put this shape together, I'm going to like that shape. If there's a principle that you can kind of do a descending baseline and it's going to be. So anyway, I'm going to take that, Victoria, and really use those words, because those principles open up the permission to be present
Right.
rather than having to do something specifically right.
Right.
And I'm going to ask you about project management principles. So Kathleen, in 3 words more or less, what do you get out of today?
Stay with myself.
Okay. I love
Stay
that.
with
And
myself.
I think principles give me presence. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
I'll play with that one. Thank you, everyone, for coming and having this conversation with us. Kathleen, thank you especially for you, and Victoria and Donald. Thank you for being part of the conversation. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.